after my Jack the Ripper video, Tyrell Shepston from Creek Falls popped a DM to me. He had a similar mystery that needed investigation. Although the case had gone cold, he was desperate for an answer as to who and why. He said that perhaps he'd sleep better at night once the case had been solved. Tyrell was an assistant organizer of an emerging anime convention in Creek Falls, Iowa. I don't know much about the world of anime, and what little I do know, embarrassingly, comes from watching Pokemon while I was growing up. This convention wasn't as big as the conventions in the big cities like Houston. Creek Falls is a small town surrounded by a number of smaller towns. So although this wasn't a large convention, many people were excited that there was going to be an anime event close to home. The first year of the event, Animazing, was in 2017 and was a massive hit. The next convention was held on the 5th of January 2018 at the City Hall. Sadly, the 2018 event was to be the last, as the 2019 convention was postponed to early 2020, and then the COVID-19 immobilized the world in 2020. Tyrell had certain amount of hesitation in contacting me, as the incident had been kept quiet, and he wasn't sure why. The local newspaper had only printed a vague little article on page 7 and a related obituary. Tyrell was worried that if the media grabbed a hold of the case, it would affect future anime conventions. But at the same time, there was a family still desperate for answers. There wasn't much in the way of solid evidence available, but Tyrell had a lot of information to get me started. Due to there having been only a relatively small group of people, there had been a great sense of camaraderie in the exhibition hall that day. Cosplay was also incredibly popular, and the work and effort put into designing and creation of all the different fandom outfits was off the charts. From photos available on the internet, all of the stalls and shops were beautifully decorated to an anime style too, and the photos looked amazing. Tyrell and I met in the cafe in Creek Falls, and he brought with him the newspaper clipping and the incident report of the event planning company he worked for. The newspaper clipping was nondescript, with the usual blah blah blah, but it gave me an idea of where to start. It read as follows. Death at anime convention. Police are investigating the sudden death of a 19-year-old male, James Jordan, on the 5th of January 2018. The incident took place at the anime convention Animazing 2018, held in Creek Falls at the City Hall over the weekend. James Jordan was found outside the arena near the emergency exit. The cause of death has not yet been released by the police, but they have made it clear that there has been a degree of foul play. The police are appealing to the public to come forward should they have any knowledge of the incident. Tyrell said that there had been a reward offered by the family for any information that would lead to an arrest. Naturally, I suspected that he was after the reward, but I couldn't fault him for that. It is strange that the reward offer didn't garner more attention from the public. I had to wonder, why was this incident kept so hush-hush, and by who? I made a note to try and find James Jordan's family. I suspected that they would have some more information. The incident report issued by the company that Tyrell worked for, Big Plans Events Limited, provided me with some more information about what happened that day in January 2018. As is usual, the report was pages and pages long, with the facts being repeated, and the company's name being cleared of any wrongdoing. I'll summarize the report and give you the highlights of what happened, then we'll draw out our own conclusions. Number 1. James Jordan was a visitor to the event and had a level 2 ticket, specifically ticket number 953. This allowed him to visit the exhibition floor for one day of the weekend-long event. The ticket included a voucher for a meal including a drink and one viewing of the highly anticipated new anime coming to America from Japan. Number 2. James Jordan attended the event with a close female friend, Samantha Drew. But they'd got separated at around 1000 hours when Samantha had gotten chatting to a stallholder and James continued along without her. The stallholder of the stand called Fluffy recalls James Jordan stopping at a stall and having a look at some of the items on sale. One of the items that James had inquired about was a big black box with red ears and tails. she had looked around for her price list, as there was no price on the item itself. The store was relatively busy, so James told her that she would come back later when she had a chance to find the price. He thought his little sister would love the cutesy box. She remembers this in all vivid detail, as the item had been stolen shortly thereafter. Or at least, she believed it had been stolen, as it was no longer anywhere in a store after she had found a price list. She was asked if she thought James had stolen the item, but she said that she didn't believe so. Number 4. No other stall holders could specifically remember James Jordan. Part 2. The incident. Fact number 1. The body was found between 2 dumpsters, but no attempt to conceal the body was made, despite there being bags and boxes in the immediate vicinity. Number 2. The voucher and ticket were found on the body, according to the police report, suggesting that the incident had taken place during the morning. The food stalls only opened at 12 o'clock, and the new anime previews area only opened a few hours later. Number 3. The emergency exit door had been propped open with a flower pot. The stall holder closest to the door, Maggie MacDonald, said that the door had been open since she got there in the early hours of the morning. No alarm was heard by anyone, and it must have been bypassed or disconnected. This was investigated as well as a part of the larger investigation, but apart from the negligence of some of the arena staff using the open door to pop out and smoke cigarettes, there doesn't appear to be any more details of interest. Number 4. Maggie MacDonald did not specifically notice James Jordan use the exit. She said that the only people she saw using the door were the event workers in their bright blue shirts and a handful of attendees. Only one of these attendees really caught her attention. She was a beautiful Korean-looking lady. She had a red fluffy ears, quite a few red fluffy tails, and wore a skimpy black strapless top and black shorts. She remembered her because the mechanics of the tails were amazing, and the whole cosplay looked incredibly realistic. She didn't know which anime the character the lady was cosplaying as, but she only recently started watching anime. She wanted to ask the lady which character she was dressed as, but a security guard with a dog had frightened the girl, and she quickly made her way to the exit. When she reached the door, she greeted someone out of view, and Maggie was going to wait for her to come back to ask about the character. Number 5. There were no CCTV cameras covering the emergency exit, but there's no explanation as to why. That was pretty much everything in the report that was of interest to me. The rest of the report was about the actions to be taken against staff for the serious misdemeanors and guidelines to be followed in future to prevent such an occurrence again. Tyrell and I chatted about the report for a while, but that was as far as his knowledge went. I went to the local little police station and asked to speak to the detective who'd been assigned to the case. After what looked like much discussion between everyone in the office, eventually a young detective called me to his office. He introduced me as Detective Johnson, and when I told him that I was there to ask some questions about the case, he looked almost scared. It visibly calmed his nerves when I assured him that I wasn't a reporter and was more like a private detective or a concerned citizen. It was easy to deduce that the department was concerned that there had not yet been a resolution to the case. The detective told me that he had not personally been involved with the case, but he had been given the case to follow up on, as it was now a cold case. He pulled out a file that was lying under a heap of other files in the cabinet in the corner. Were those all unsolved cases? The detective said that they had already made most of the information open to the public in the hopes of finding a lead. So I was welcome to go to the Public Records Department. He did me a huge favor, though. He let me have a quick look at the crime scene photographs. I don't know what I was expecting, but the first photo of James Jordan's body shocked me. I'd seen gruesome images before, and I'd seen some messed up bodies in my time, but this one was different. I scanned through the photos, hoping to find a clearer view of the injury the body had sustained. The injury was clearly not compatible with life, and the only way I can describe what the injury looked like was that a very large, blunt object had hit the body in the stomach. Something like a cannonball. I shook my head, The wound was caved into the body, but there was no exit wound. The detective was wary of letting me see the coroner's report, as he wasn't sure that it was okay to make it public knowledge. But the photos told me enough. There were no other wounds on the body besides the hole in the torso. The detective told me that the liver had been removed, but all the other organs had been untouched. This was the end of the information that I could get from the detective. I popped over to the public records, but there was nothing more of interest to be found. Another quick search online, and I was able to find the address that James had lived at in Creek Falls. When I arrived at the family home, it looked horrific. The garden was full of garbage, and the grass was up to my hip in height. I carefully made my way through the front door, which appeared to be hanging on by a prayer. An elderly lady answered my knock. When I started to explain my reason for being there, she went absolutely crazy. After some ranting about gold diggers coming to her for a reward and not actually having any information, she slammed the door in my face. Further knocks on the door were ignored. As I made my way back to my car, a neighbor called me over. Apparently, James's father had passed away last year, and his mother's mental and physical health had deteriorated violently since then. The situation was heartbreaking, but social services were working at having the old lady admitted to a nursing home. Sadly, that would be the end of leads I had to follow. So, what happened? The first theory that comes to mind is that the Korean lady was popping out through the door to meet up with someone, the person she greeted. It's entirely possible that she and her friend hadn't seen anything, and have no information to share. In this theory, someone unknown to us and completely nondescript exited after James and before the Korean lady, and committed the gruesome murder. A vague theory, something I'd expect from a conspiracy nut, is the theory that the young Korean lady had seen James looking at the box with ears and tails. She stole the box, took off the ears and tail, and put them on herself. James had popped out of the emergency door to have a cigarette, and she followed him out and was spooked by the security guard with the dog. I'm not sure what kind of weapon she would have used, but it was likely she didn't want the security guard to stop her. No, that's just downright ridiculous. But maybe, just maybe the Korean lady saw what happened to James, and it is too scared to come forward as a witness. I'd like to appeal to the public, to you guys, and anybody that you know, especially if she somehow sees this, the lady who went through the emergency exit, to come forward. If you have any information with regards to this incident, please contact me or the Creek Falls Police Department. You can remain anonymous if you choose so. This is Secrets, Crime, and Paranormal, signing out.